She named me her greatest supporting buddy after 8 years of me behaving like her husband. The words hit me like a physical blow at what should have been a celebration. I'd been standing beside Rachel at Tom and Linda's surprise 30th anniversary party, watching her work the room with that effortless charm she'd perfected over the years, when Mrs. Henderson approached us with her usual warm smile. "Rachel, dear, when are you two finally going to make it official? We've all been waiting for an engagement announcement." I felt my heart skip, thinking this might be the perfect moment for Rachel to acknowledge what we'd built together, but instead she laughed that melodic laugh and gestured toward me like I was a helpful appliance. "Oh, Kevin's not my boyfriend, he's my greatest supporting buddy. I've never really been the dating type, you know. But Kevin here helps me with absolutely everything. Gallery finances, house repairs, you name it. I honestly don't know what I'd do without him." The room seemed to tilt sideways as 60 people, including my own parents who'd driven 3 hours expecting to celebrate our commitment, absorbed this casual dismissal of 8 years I'd considered a relationship. I stood there in my carefully chosen suit, the same one I'd worn to every important event in Rachel's life, watching faces around me shift from expectation to confusion to something that looked dangerously close to pity. Tom clapped me on the shoulder with obvious discomfort while Linda quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. Supporting buddy. That's how the woman I'd been planning to propose to next month viewed our entire relationship. I thought about the engagement ring hidden in my sock drawer, the one I'd been carrying to every social gathering for weeks waiting for the right moment. I thought about the renovations I'd spent 3 years completing on her Victorian house, working weekends and evenings to restore the crown molding and refinish the hardwood floors because we were building something beautiful together. I thought about the countless nights I'd stayed late at her art gallery, managing her books and handling tax preparations because she claimed numbers made her anxious. Every gallery opening where I'd arrive early to hang artwork and stayed late to clean up, every family dinner where I'd brought wine and flowers, every holiday where I'd bought thoughtful gifts for her parents and sister, all of it recontextualized in a single devastating phrase. "Kevin manages all my boring business stuff so I can focus on the creative side," Rachel continued, addressing Mrs. Henderson's husband who joined the conversation. "He's incredibly responsible with money and just has this natural talent for organization. I'm so lucky to have found such a reliable friend." Reliable. The words stabbed deeper with each casual mention, delivered with the same tone she might use to praise a particularly efficient cleaning service. I watched her face as she spoke, searching for any sign that she understood the magnitude of what she was saying, but there was nothing. No recognition, no awareness that she was publicly reducing 8 years of what I'd considered deep emotional intimacy to a series of completed tasks and favors. My mother caught my eye from across the room, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern that made my chest tighten with humiliation. She'd been planning to ask Rachel about wedding venues next week, had even started researching florists because she assumed an engagement was imminent. Now she was watching her son being described as hired help at a party where everyone had expected to celebrate our future together. The conversation continued around me, but I stopped hearing the words. All I could think about was how perfectly this explained everything that had never quite made sense about our relationship. The way Rachel never seemed particularly excited about romantic gestures, how she'd deflect whenever I brought up moving in together officially, why she always seemed surprised when I expressed jealousy about other men. She genuinely didn't see me as a romantic partner, never had, apparently. I was her unpaid life manager, the reliable friend who handled all the aspects of adult life she found tedious or challenging. When the party finally ended and we drove home in her car, the one I'd helped her buy and still helped maintain, I sat in silence trying to process the complete reshaping of my reality. "Great party," Rachel said cheerfully, apparently oblivious to the bomb she detonated. Tom and Linda seemed so surprised and happy. I love seeing couples who've made it work long-term. Couples who've made it work. As if we weren't one. As if 8 years of shared experiences, shared goals, and what I'd considered shared love was just an extended friendship with benefits and household services. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything between us. Instead of confronting Rachel directly about the supporting buddy comment, I decided to test the true nature of our relationship through strategic withdrawal. I wanted to see what would happen if her greatest supporting buddy suddenly became unavailable for all those reliable services she'd so casually described to 60 people. The first opportunity came 3 days later when Rachel called about gallery tax season, her voice carrying that familiar expectant tone. "Hey, are you free this weekend? I need to get all the quarterly paperwork sorted before the 15th, and you know how hopeless I am with the spreadsheets." I'd spent the last 4 tax seasons dedicating entire weekends to organizing her financial records, creating detailed reports, and ensuring every deduction was properly documented. It was tedious work that could take 12 to 15 hours, but I'd always done it willingly because I thought we were building a future together. "Actually, I can't this weekend," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "I've got other commitments." The silence stretched for several seconds. Other commitments? What kind of commitments? There was something sharp in her voice now, an edge I'd rarely heard directed at me. "Just personal stuff I need to handle." I didn't elaborate, didn't offer to reschedule or suggest alternatives like I normally would. For the first time in 8 years, I was setting a boundary without immediately providing a solution to her problem. "Kevin, this is really important. The deadline is Monday, and I don't understand any of these forms. Can't you just move your personal stuff to next weekend?" The panic creeping into her voice was telling. Not disappointment about missing time together, not concern about my well-being, just anxiety about losing access to free professional services. "I'm sure you'll figure it out. There are plenty of accountants who specialize in small business taxes." The suggestion seemed to genuinely shock her. "But you always do my taxes. It's our routine." Our routine. As if my unpaid labor was some cherished tradition rather than a one-sided obligation I'd foolishly accepted. The second test came when her car started making strange noises the following week. Normally, she'd call me first, knowing I'd either diagnose the problem myself or accompany her to the mechanic to prevent her from being overcharged. Instead, I let the call go to voicemail. "Kevin, the BMW is making this horrible grinding sound and I'm terrified to drive it. Can you take a look tonight? I really need your expert opinion before I take it anywhere." I waited 6 hours before texting back. "Sounds like you should take it to a professional mechanic." Her response was immediate and revealing. "Why are you being so weird lately? This is exactly the kind of thing you always help me with. I'm supposed to trust some random mechanic over you?" The entitlement in that message was breathtaking. Not a request for help, but an expectation of service with irritation that I wasn't immediately available to provide it. She ended up paying $89 for a diagnostic that revealed worn brake pads, something I could have identified in 5 minutes, but something she was perfectly capable of handling herself. The most telling reaction came when her Victorian house's ancient heating system started acting up during a cold snap in March. I'd become her unofficial maintenance supervisor over the years, handling everything from minor plumbing repairs to major renovation planning. My phone buzzed incessantly for 3 days, 17 calls, 32 text messages, and 2 voicemails that escalated from requesting help to demanding explanations for my sudden unavailability. "The house is freezing and I can't figure out what's wrong with the furnace. This is an emergency, Kevin. Why aren't you responding?" Followed by, "I don't understand why you're being so selfish. I've never asked you for anything unreasonable." The irony of that last statement was almost funny. She'd never asked for anything unreasonable because I'd trained her to expect everything as a matter of course. Her final message revealed the truth. "Fine, I'll hire someone, but I hope you realize how expensive this is going to be." Some friend you're turning out to be. Friend. There it was again, that word that reduced 8 years of what I'd considered love to a casual social connection with convenient benefits. She paid $340 for an emergency repair call that diagnosed a simple filter replacement, something I'd taught her to do herself 3 years earlier, but something she'd apparently forgotten because she'd never needed to remember while I was handling everything. Each test confirmed what the anniversary party had revealed. Rachel valued my services, not my companionship. She wasn't missing my presence, my conversation, or my emotional support. She was frustrated by the sudden interruption of free labor and expertise she'd come to consider her entitlement. The woman I'd been planning to marry was essentially experiencing the inconvenience of losing her unpaid personal assistant, and her increasingly frantic attempts to restore our routine had nothing to do with missing me and everything to do with missing what I provided. 2 weeks of strategic withdrawal finally forced the conversation I'd been dreading but desperately needed. Rachel cornered me at her art gallery after hours, her carefully composed facade cracking as she demanded explanations for my sudden transformation from reliable helper to distant acquaintance. The gallery felt different that evening, all those paintings I'd helped hang and lights I'd installed now seeming like evidence of my own foolishness rather than our shared accomplishments. "We need to talk about whatever's going on with you," she said, positioning herself between me and the exit like she was containing a flight risk. "Your behavior lately has been completely out of character, and frankly, it's starting to affect my ability to function normally." Her ability to function normally. Not our relationship, not her feelings about me, but her operational capacity. I decided this was the moment for complete honesty, the conversation that would either salvage something real between us or confirm my worst suspicions about the last 8 years. "Rachel, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you have any romantic feelings for me at all?" The question seemed to catch her off guard, her expression shifting from defensive irritation to genuine confusion. "Romantic feelings? Kevin, where is this coming from? We've been friends for 8 years. You've never indicated that you wanted anything different." Friends for 8 years. The casual dismissal of every intimate moment, every shared experience, every gesture of love I'd thought we'd exchanged hit me like a physical blow. "I've been in love with you for 8 years, Rachel. I thought we were building a life together. I thought what we had was a relationship." She stared at me for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite read. "Kevin, I care about you deeply, but not in that way. I thought you understood that we were close friends who happened to be compatible roommates sometimes. I never led you on or made promises about romance. Compatible roommates sometimes." That's how she categorized 8 years of what I'd considered emotional intimacy, shared holidays, and countless nights spent talking about our future together. But it was her next revelation that truly shattered my understanding of reality. "Actually, I've been dating other people this whole time. I assumed you knew that and were okay with it." The words hit me like ice water. Dating other people? What other people? Well, there was David last year, the architect I met at the Morrison Gallery opening. We were together for about 6 months. Really nice guy, very successful. And before that, Marcus, the lawyer from my yoga class. We almost moved in together, actually. I felt the ground shifting beneath me as she casually described relationships I'd been completely unaware of, serious relationships that had apparently overlapped with what I'd considered our exclusive emotional connection. "You were in a 6-month relationship with someone else? When?" "From March through September last year. We broke up because he had issues with my friendship with you, which I thought was completely unreasonable. He kept saying our dynamic was inappropriate for someone in a committed relationship, that I couldn't expect him to be serious about me while I had some guy managing my entire life." The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. Last September, Rachel had been unusually emotional for about a week, claiming she was stressed about gallery finances and needed extra support. I'd spent countless hours comforting her, bringing her favorite foods, staying late to help with paperwork I now realized was just busy work to keep me occupied while she processed a real breakup with someone who actually mattered to her. "I told all my dates about you from the beginning," she continued, apparently oblivious to how devastating this information was. "I was always upfront about having a close male friend who helped with business matters and house stuff. Most guys were fine with it once they understood you weren't a romantic threat." Not a romantic threat. 8 years of devotion, and I wasn't even significant enough to register as competition. "So David broke up with you because of me?" "Because of his own insecurity, really. He couldn't understand that men and women can have meaningful friendships without sexual tension. He actually had the nerve to suggest that I was leading you on, which was completely ridiculous since you'd never expressed romantic interest." Never expressed romantic interest. I thought about the anniversary gifts, the weekend getaways, the countless evenings spent talking about our dreams and plans. How had she interpreted all of that as platonic friendship? "Rachel, did it ever occur to you that maybe David was right? That maybe spending every weekend together, sharing holidays with each other's families, and planning renovations on your house together might send mixed signals?" She looked genuinely perplexed by the suggestion. "But that's what close friends do. You've always been incredibly generous with your time and energy, and I've always appreciated that about you. I thought you enjoyed helping me because that's your personality. You're naturally supportive and reliable." Naturally supportive and reliable. like it was a character trait rather than love expressed through action. The final devastating piece came when I asked about her future expectations. Where did you see this friendship going, Rachel? What did you think the next few years would look like? Honestly, I always pictured you as the best man at my wedding someday. I figured when I finally found the right guy to settle down with, you'd be there to support that relationship too. Maybe your eventual wife and I would become close friends, and we could all vacation together as couples. Wouldn't that be nice? She said it with such genuine enthusiasm, such complete obliviousness to how crushing those words were, that I almost laughed at the absurdity. She'd envisioned me standing beside her at the altar, watching her marry someone else, celebrating the love she'd never felt for me while introducing my own wife to the dynamic that had consumed 8 years of my life. When I maintained firm boundaries after that devastating gallery conversation, Rachel launched what I can only describe as a coordinated emotional manipulation campaign designed to pressure me back into compliance through guilt, social pressure, and manufactured crises. The first wave came through her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who called me on a Tuesday evening with carefully crafted concern in her voice. "Kevin, dear, I'm worried about Rachel. She's been having terrible anxiety attacks lately and barely eating. I see her sitting on her porch at all hours looking absolutely miserable. I know you two had some kind of falling out, but surely whatever happened isn't worth abandoning someone who clearly needs help." The implication was clear. I was a cruel monster abandoning a fragile woman in her time of need. Mrs. Patterson had obviously been fed a very selective version of recent events, one that positioned Rachel as the victim of my sudden and inexplicable coldness. I politely explained that Rachel was a capable adult who could seek professional help if she was struggling, but Mrs. Patterson's disappointed tone made it clear she'd been expecting me to immediately rush over with comfort and solutions. The social pressure escalated when Rachel's sister Emma organized what she called a casual family dinner but was clearly an intervention designed to make me feel guilty for my withdrawal. Rachel's parents, whom I'd considered surrogate family for years, expressed disappointment in my sudden distance while sharing carefully selected stories about how much Rachel had supposedly supported me during difficult times. "Remember when you were studying for your CPA exam and Rachel brought you dinner every night for 2 weeks?" her mother said with pointed emphasis. "Or when you had that terrible flu and she took care of you around the clock. That's what real friends do for each other, Kevin. They show up when it matters." The manipulation was sophisticated, reframing 8 years of my support for Rachel as evidence of her support for me. They conveniently ignored mentioning that during my CPA studies, I'd also been renovating Rachel's kitchen, or that during my flu, she'd mostly brought takeout while I continued handling her gallery's tax preparation from my sickbed. But the most calculated move came when Rachel appeared at my accounting firm with catered lunch for my entire 20-person department, publicly apologizing for whatever misunderstanding had damaged our friendship while my colleagues watched what appeared to be a heartfelt reconciliation attempt. "I know I've been taking you for granted," she announced in front of everyone, including my boss who'd heard me mention Rachel countless times over the years. "I realize now how much I depend on your friendship, and I want to work on being a better friend to you. Can we please start over?" The performance was masterful, positioning herself as the humble party seeking forgiveness while making me look petty and unforgiving if I didn't immediately accept her public apology. My coworkers spent the rest of the week asking when I'd be bringing Rachel around again, several mentioning how lucky I was to have someone who cared enough to make such a grand gesture. They had no context for understanding that her apology was entirely about restoring access to free services, not about genuine remorse for 8 years of emotional manipulation. The campaign reached its desperate peak when Rachel offered to try dating me romantically, but even this was framed as a business transaction rather than genuine interest. "I've been thinking about what you said at the gallery," she told me during an ambush conversation outside my apartment building. "Maybe I haven't been fair to you. Maybe I should give us a chance as more than friends. We could try going on actual dates, see how it feels to be romantic together." The offer should have been everything I'd wanted to hear, but her tone made it clear this was a calculated negotiation rather than a declaration of discovered feelings. I mean, we already know we're compatible in so many ways. We enjoy each other's company, we work well together on projects, and we certainly have the foundation for something deeper. It could be exactly what we both need. The clinical way she described potential romance, like a merger between compatible companies rather than love between two people, revealed how fundamentally she misunderstood what I'd been offering her for 8 years. She was willing to fake romantic feelings to maintain access to her unpaid life manager, but the very fact that she was negotiating love like a business arrangement proved she'd never felt it. I realized then that Rachel genuinely believed she could solve this crisis through strategic concessions and emotional manipulation because she'd never understood that my devotion came from love, not from a desire to be useful. In her mind, I was a service provider who'd become difficult to manage, not a man whose heart she'd been unknowingly breaking for nearly a decade. Her increasing desperation to restore our arrangement only confirmed that she saw our entire relationship as a transaction where she received support and companionship while providing just enough positive reinforcement to keep me invested. The manipulation campaign revealed the calculated nature of her approach to relationships. She'd learned to manage people's emotions to maintain access to what they could provide her, and my withdrawal had disrupted a system she'd spent years perfecting. Despite everything I'd learned about Rachel's true feelings, I decided to give her one final opportunity for honest closure by arranging a meeting at the lake house where I'd invested countless hours and thousands of dollars in renovations. The property had been her grandfather's legacy, a rundown cabin that I'd helped transform into a beautiful retreat over 3 summers, installing new plumbing, refinishing the deck, and creating the cozy atmosphere where we'd spent what I'd considered our most intimate moments together. Rachel arrived with what were clearly prepared talking points about compromise and friendship repair, but I was determined to cut through her diplomatic language and get to the truth about our 8-year dynamic. Before we discuss any kind of future friendship, I need you to answer something honestly, I said as we sat on the deck I'd rebuilt with my own hands. During all these years we've known each other, have you ever felt even a moment of romantic attraction toward me? Even once? She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the lake as if the water might provide her with a tactful answer. Finally, she shook her head with what appeared to be genuine regret. No, Kevin. I've never felt that way about you. I wish I could say otherwise, but I've always seen you as a dear friend, nothing more. The honesty was devastating but necessary. At least now I knew exactly where I stood and had always stood in her emotional landscape. But her next revelation cut even deeper than I'd expected. Actually, I probably should have encouraged you to date other people more actively over the years. I realize now that I might have been inadvertently holding you back from finding real romance. The casual way she said it made my stomach drop. What do you mean, encouraged me to date other people? Well, I did give your number to Jennifer from my yoga class about 2 years ago, and to that gallery customer who kept asking about you. What was her name? Michelle? I thought you might hit it off with either of them, but you never seemed interested in pursuing anything. I stared at her in complete shock. You set me up with other women? When? A few times over the years. I always thought it was strange that such a catch like you stayed single for so long. You're reliable, successful, thoughtful, any woman would be lucky to have you. I figured maybe you were just shy about making the first move. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. She'd been actively trying to pair me off with other women while I was completely devoted to her, apparently unable to recognize that my disinterest in other women stemmed from my love for her. Rachel, did it ever occur to you that maybe I wasn't interested in other women because I was in love with you? I honestly never made that connection, she said with what seemed like genuine confusion. I thought your helpfulness and attention were just your personality. You're naturally generous and caring. I assume that's how you treated all your close friends. All my close friends. As if I regularly spent weekends renovating houses and managing finances for a roster of people who meant nothing more to me than casual companionship. The ultimate betrayal came when she revealed her long-term vision for our relationship, the future she'd been planning while I'd been planning something entirely different. I always pictured you as the best man at my wedding, she said with enthusiasm that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I used to imagine how perfect it would be, you standing up there supporting me on the most important day of my life, giving some beautiful speech about our friendship. And then hopefully your wife would become one of my closest friends too, and we could all vacation together, maybe buy houses near each other someday. The image she painted was so grotesquely opposite to my own dreams that I almost couldn't process it. While I'd been fantasizing about proposing to her at this very lake house, she'd been fantasizing about me watching her marry someone else. You really thought I'd be happy watching you marry another man? I thought you'd be happy for me finding love, the same way I'd be happy for you. Isn't that what best friends do? Support each other's happiness even when it's not with each other. Her complete inability to understand why this scenario would be torture for someone who loved her revealed the fundamental disconnect between us. She genuinely couldn't comprehend that the women she tried to set me up with had probably sensed my emotional unavailability, that my devotion to her had made me a poor prospect for anyone else. Those women you tried to set me up with, Jennifer and Michelle, what did they say when nothing came of it? Jennifer said you seemed nice but distracted, like your heart was somewhere else. Michelle mentioned that you were obviously a good guy but didn't seem ready for dating. I just figured you were focused on your career. Focused on my career. Not focused on her, not emotionally unavailable because I was already in love, just professionally preoccupied. The conversation ended with Rachel still trying to negotiate some version of our old dynamic, still unable to understand that her vision of friendship was incompatible with my need for emotional honesty and self-respect. As I drove away from the lake house for what I knew would be the last time, I realized that 8 years of my life had been built on a foundation of mutual misunderstanding so complete it was almost impressive in its thoroughness. After implementing complete no contact and blocking Rachel on every platform I could think of, her desperation transformed into something that genuinely frightened me, stalking behavior that escalated from annoying to dangerous over the course of 3 months. It started with fake social media profiles using stolen photos of attractive women, obvious attempts to monitor my activity and reconnect under false pretenses. The profiles would send friend requests with messages like, "Hey, you seem really interesting," or "We have mutual friends, I think we've met before." When I ignored these transparent attempts, she created professional-looking LinkedIn profiles claiming to be recruiters or business consultants who wanted to discuss career opportunities. The digital harassment was just the beginning. Rachel began showing up at my apartment building at increasingly inappropriate hours, always with elaborate excuses designed to seem reasonable to any witnesses. She'd arrive with packages claiming the delivery service had mistakenly brought my mail to her address, or with borrowed items she insisted she needed to return immediately. The building's doorman, Frank, started giving me concerned looks when she appeared for the 4th time in 1 week, each time with a different story about why she urgently needed to see me. "That lady friend of yours has been by 3 times today," Frank mentioned casually on a Friday evening. "Seemed pretty upset about something. Said there was a family emergency and she was your emergency contact." The manipulation escalated when she contacted my workplace claiming to be my sister with urgent family news, forcing my assistant to interrupt an important client meeting to deliver what turned out to be a completely fabricated crisis. She'd researched enough about my family to make the story plausible, claiming our father had been in an accident and I needed to call her immediately. When I didn't respond to that manufactured emergency, she called my gym asking about my workout schedule, introducing herself as a potential training partner who wanted to coordinate sessions. The fitness staff, trained to be helpful and accommodating, actually gave her information about my usual Tuesday and Thursday evening routines before I could warn them about the situation. But perhaps the most disturbing incident involved my elderly parents, who received a concerned phone call from someone claiming to be my coworker expressing worry about my mental health and recent behavioral changes. Rachel had somehow obtained their contact information and convinced my mother that I was going through a serious depression that required family intervention. My parents, genuinely frightened by this supposed professional concern, drove 3 hours to check on me unexpectedly, creating exactly the kind of crisis Rachel had been hoping would force me to reach out to her for support. The harassment reached its peak when she began leaving 15-page handwritten letters under my door, rambling manifestos that revealed just how completely she'd lost touch with reality. The letters ranged from nostalgic reminiscences about our beautiful friendship to angry accusations that I was being manipulated by jealous people who wanted to destroy our connection. One particularly disturbing letter included detailed plans for how we could repair our friendship through a structured schedule of weekly activities, as if she could legislate our relationship back into existence through careful planning and persistence. The final escalation that forced me to involve law enforcement came when building security cameras caught Rachel attempting to break into my apartment using what appeared to be a copied key. She'd somehow managed to obtain or create a duplicate, arriving at 2 a.m. thinking I wouldn't be home, apparently planning to wait inside until I returned. The security footage showed her struggling with the lock for nearly 10 minutes before giving up, but the fact that she'd obtained unauthorized access to my building and attempted to enter my private space crossed every possible line. When I filed the police report and applied for a restraining order, the officer reviewing my documentation was genuinely shocked by the scope and duration of Rachel's harassment campaign. "Ma'am, this is stalking behavior," he told me matter-of-factly. "The fake profiles, the workplace calls, the unauthorized key, this goes way beyond someone having trouble accepting the end of a relationship. This is obsessive behavior that could escalate to something dangerous." The restraining order was granted immediately, but I realized Rachel's obsession had reached a level where legal intervention might not be enough to ensure my safety. For the first time in 8 years, I seriously considered relocating to a different city, changing jobs, and starting completely over rather than continuing to deal with someone who'd apparently decided that losing access to her unpaid life manager was worth destroying both our lives over. 8 months after relocating to Boston and starting therapy specifically focused on codependent relationships, I built the healthiest life I'd ever known, one with clear boundaries, genuine reciprocal relationships, and most importantly, a partner who demonstrated authentic interest in mutual support rather than one-sided extraction. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me recognize the patterns that had made me vulnerable to Rachel's manipulation, teaching me to distinguish between generous love and self-destructive enabling. "You confused being needed with being loved," she explained during one breakthrough session. "Rachel didn't love you, she loved what you provided. There's a fundamental difference between someone who appreciates your support and someone who exploits your willingness to give it." The clarity was painful but liberating, helping me understand how 8 years of my life had been consumed by someone who'd never seen me as anything more than a convenient resource. I met Sarah at a museum fundraising event where I'd volunteered to help with financial planning for their new wing construction. She was the lead curator, brilliant and passionate about her work, but what struck me most was how she insisted on contributing equally to every aspect of our developing relationship. When I offered to help her move apartments, she hired professional movers and invited me to dinner afterward as a thank you. When we planned weekend trips, she researched locations and booked accommodations, refusing to let me handle all the logistics like I'd grown accustomed to doing with Rachel. "I appreciate your thoughtfulness," Sarah told me early in our relationship, "but I want to take care of you too. Relationships should be partnerships, not caretaking arrangements." The contrast was stunning. Someone who actually wanted to give rather than just receive, who saw my support as a gift rather than an entitlement. Meanwhile, Rachel's life had completely unraveled without her primary support system, creating a cascade of failures that revealed just how dependent she'd become on my unpaid services. Through mutual friends who couldn't resist sharing updates despite my requests not to hear them, I learned that the art gallery had failed within 6 months of my withdrawal. Without someone managing her finances, handling tax preparations, and providing business guidance, Rachel had made several costly mistakes that destroyed her profit margins and alienated key clients. The Victorian house I'd spent 3 years renovating was lost to foreclosure when she defaulted on the mortgage payments I'd been helping her manage. Apparently, she'd never fully understood the financial commitments involved in homeownership, having relied on my planning and oversight to maintain her budget and payment schedules. The house sold for significantly less than market value because deferred maintenance had caused problems I'd previously prevented through regular upkeep and monitoring. But perhaps most tellingly, Rachel's attempts to replace me with other men failed spectacularly as each new person quickly recognized her manipulative expectations and established firm boundaries she couldn't accept. According to our friend Lisa, who'd initially been sympathetic to Rachel's version of events, there had been a series of brief relationships that ended when men realized she expected them to function as unpaid life managers rather than romantic partners. She tried the same pattern with Mark from her yoga class, Lisa told me during an unexpected encounter at a coffee shop. Had him doing her taxes within 3 weeks of dating. He lasted about a month before he told her she needed to hire professionals for that kind of help. The pattern apparently repeated with several other men who'd been initially attracted to Rachel's beauty and charm but quickly discovered the extensive support requirements that came with dating her. Each relationship ended with Rachel expressing confusion about why men kept abandoning her when she needed help, apparently unable to recognize that healthy adults don't expect romantic partners to manage their entire lives for them. The final piece of Rachel's downfall came when her stalking behavior extended beyond me to another man she tried to manipulate. According to the police report Lisa had heard about through mutual friends, Rachel had harassed a lawyer named Daniel using similar tactics to the ones she'd employed against me: fake emergency calls, workplace harassment, and unauthorized attempts to access his personal space. Daniel had immediately sought legal action, resulting in a second restraining order and court-mandated therapy that finally forced Rachel to confront her patterns of manipulative behavior. "She's actually getting real help now," Lisa mentioned somewhat hopefully. Apparently the therapy is helping her understand how her approach to relationships has been damaging to everyone involved, including herself. I felt genuine relief hearing that Rachel was finally addressing her issues, not because I had any desire to reconcile, but because I wanted her to develop the capacity for healthy relationships that wouldn't destroy other people's lives. My own life had become everything I'd hoped it could be when I wasn't pouring all my energy into someone who'd never valued it appropriately. Sarah and I were discussing engagement seriously, planning a future built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities rather than one-sided caretaking. For the first time in nearly a decade, I was in a relationship where both people contributed equally and genuinely wanted to be there.